So I had this interview on my podcast, The Truth That Heals, and it's with Lois Hollis. And we talk a bunch about shame and guilt. But I mean, it's not just about shame and guilt. Of course, we also talk about overcoming that and healing from that. But, I've been also thinking about how shame guilt has negatively impacted my life. And if I if I look at myself, before I joined the cult, I was this happy-go-lucky kid. I love going on adventures. I loved traveling. I loved meeting new people, and I was very outgoing. I was very talkative. I loved communicating. I loved languages, and I would try to learn different languages because my goal was to just travel the world, meet people, and live a full life. But then I joined this cult, and I've shared about that, how negative that was, how there was a lot of negative energy, and how when I came back home and I left that cult, sadly, I wasn't the same person. And I'm saying that because my parents, they shared with me that when they saw me, and the first few years, they didn't know who I was. And the truth is that I didn't know who I was because there was so much shame and guilt that was involved in the cult. And to be honest, they would do these things called, public humiliations, where they're publicly humiliating you in front of the community. And they were doing just so it was negative energy. But not only that, let's say a leader was being a pain in the rear. If you were to contest that and ask, or make it obvious that this was making you feeling uncomfortable, then they would tell you something like, "Oh, we were just testing you and you failed. You're a bad person." And so it would increase this shame and guilt. And it's unfortunate because me and several other people, we joined that life to be good people. We joined that way of life to serve God. And I know a lot of people don't believe in God, but my mindset was, I'm doing this for the love of God. But then you have this authority, you have this leadership that they're punishing you no matter whether you do something good or whether you do something wrong. You're always the bad guy. You're always the bad person. You're always the failure. You're always the loser. And so they instill that in our minds. They instill that in my mind so that when I left, I felt like I couldn't do anything without them. I felt like I still needed that cult. Not that, well, I didn't think it was a cult, but I felt that I still needed their presence in my life. But going back to shame guilt and listening to Lois Hollis in our interview, and thinking about it afterwards, it had me really reflecting on the years after I left, especially like the first 2 years. I didn't really want to get out of my room. I wanted to stay there, and I felt that because I was no longer attached to the group, that my life was over. My life was done. That I'm just going to live out the rest of my days, because I really thought that I didn't have much time left. I thought that any day I was going to be taken or whatever because I'm not being blessed by God anymore. But there was no desire to live. There was no desire for me to be that adventurous person again. But you know what changed was love energy. Because in that interview with Lois Hollis, we talk about the negative energy of shame, guilt, and then we do talk a little bit about the opposite, about the positive. But I think that reflecting on my life, what really helped me was having my parents. And I know that, I mean, for other cult survivors, we all have so many different experiences, so many different journeys. Some families really suck. And I'll be honest, my family had a hard time understanding who the hell I was because I didn't understand who I was. And they would ask me all these questions. And sometimes I wouldn't like them to be asking me these questions. I was like, leave me alone. And despite how different I was and like non social, they were very loving. My parents, my family, my brothers, cousins, they they showed up. They didn't always have to say, oh, we love you. I mean, that was nice, but their actions, them being there, if I needed someone to talk to, they were there. And many times I didn't want to talk, but when I was ready to talk, they made it known to me that they were ready to listen. They weren't there to preach, they were just ready to listen. And I would tell them all the negative experiences, all the shame, all the guilt that I experienced in the cult. And you know what? Their actions, they would give me a hug, or they would say, you know what? It's okay. We love you. You're back. Let's keep going.